Hello developers, how are you all doing? Today I'm back with another video, and in this video I want to discuss how to implement pagination with FastAPI. First, let's start off by looking at what exactly does pagination mean. Let's see how Google is paginating the search results. I'm searching for The Weeknd, my favorite music artist right now, and if you see, there are around 83 million results. How are they going to manage to display all of the results in just a single page? It will be very slow and ruin the user experience, right? So what they are going to do is they are going to paginate the results and split them into chunks called pages and display only the first page. So if the user needs to go ahead and check for some more results, he's just going to click on the next page and load the next page. If we open this page in a new tab and look at the URL, let me just inspect and see. You can see that there is a query parameter called start. So this start is telling the Google server to just get the second page, not the first page. So if we just give start equal to 20, we should be getting not the second page, the third page. So let's check if that's correct or not. If I go down and see, so you can see that the third page is highlighted. So that's how pagination works. So they just have a couple of query parameters, and based on that they will be serving you the results. Not all of them, but a subset of them. So let's implement that in our FastAPI. So I have a very basic application setup. So it just has a beautiful home URL with a beautiful message, which is really inspiring. And it also has a starlet configuration. So starlet is basically on what FastAPI is built on. So FastAPI is just an extension of starlet. So we can do basically all the things that you do in starlet with FastAPI also. So I'm using the config of starlet to load the environment variables. So I have an .env file here, so which has some constants which I can manipulate from here directly without disturbing the code. And you can maintain multiple environment files based on your production builds and your development local builds and all, and maybe for your testing builds also. So it's a good practice with FastAPI to load config from starlet config. So I'm just importing the config class and loading the environment file. So this config is gonna hold all the variables of our environment file. So let me just extract those variables from config. So I'm extracting all the 3 variables here. So this is a random user API, which is really interesting. So let me just visit that website and show you why I'm having these variables here. Okay, so if I visit this website, you can see that we get a results object inside which we have another object 0. Basically this is a list of users, randomly generated users. These users do not exist. These are just some gibberish text and details that this API generates for us, which is really cool and helpful when you want to test some features like this. And what does it return us? So in a particular user detail, we have the name, and in that name we have first name and last name, and his location, which we will not be concentrating in this example, and an email which we are interested in, and the login details we can leave aside, and the picture, just for example. Okay, so they are providing a URL. So they have large size, medium size, and thumbnails also. Okay, so let's select some picture and the name, first name, last name, and email. So that's what our users are going to contain, and we are going to load our users from this endpoint itself. So how many users are we interested in? We are interested in 100 users. You can maybe make these 500 if you would like to. I'm just sticking with 100. Okay, and then what are the fields that I'm interested in? As I said, I'm only concentrating on the name field and the email and also the picture. Okay, So now as we have the variables sorted out, we need to load the user details from that website. So before you loading that, I want to create a user class, which is class user, and it's gonna inherit the base model of Pydantic, so that we have all the cool things that Pydantic provides. So I'm importing the base model from Pydantic and using that base model to extend it and create my user class. And our user class is just going to have, as we discussed, the name, email and picture. Okay, and I also added an ID to uniquely distinguish each user object. And the email will be an email string, which is also provided by Pydantic. You can import that model also. This validates whether the string is not just a string and it's actually a valid email. And also we have the URL, HTTP URL model, also from Pydantic. Okay, so now we have a user class, and if you would like to replace this, you can change it to a UUID. I'm just leaving it as an integer for now, the ID. Okay, so now I want to write a function called getData. So this function is just going to load all the user information from the API that I showed you just a minute ago. So I'm using the HTTPX library to send the request to the API. So we have the API, and I have added a query parameter. So this include parameter just gives the fields. So the fields are nothing but name, email and picture. So it's gonna fetch only these fields, and it's gonna limit the number of results to 100 as I have it here. Okay, so this endpoint is gonna get that results, and we are returning the JSON. We convert the response into JSON, and we are interested in the results object, as I've showed you previously in the browser. Okay, so now that we have the function ready, we need to be running this function whenever our app starts up, because we don't have a database setup now to keep things simple. So we need to have a fake data, right? So I want to store that fake data using this getData function. So let me add an startup event to the app. So the startup event looks like this. You can add events like this. So on event, FastAPI provides you these events also. You can also have a shutdown event as well. On startup, you can ask FastAPI to run a particular specific function, which is going to be an async define startup. Okay, so in this I'm going to get the users from the getData function, and I'm going to sanitize them. So after sanitization, the users list is going to be our sanitized list, and I will append the sanitized users from the raw users. Okay, I will iterate through the raw users. For raw user and raw users, actually I want to enumerate it so that I will also get the index. Enumerate raw users, and I will unpack it like this: id comma raw user. Okay, so this is gonna give the ID also for each element. So this is basically just the index of the element in this particular list. Okay, so now I am going to append a user object into the users list. Okay, so I just pasted this code snippet here. So what this is exactly doing, so it is appending a user object into the users list. So the user object is obviously the object, the class that we have defined here, and it is extracting the ID. So it's giving the ID, which is just the index, and then it is parsing the name from the raw user, so it is going into the raw user's name object, and in there it is getting the first name, and in the same way it is getting the name and then the last name and joining those both with a space in between. So this will be our first name, the name, first name and the last name with a space between. And then extracting the email and also the picture. I am just selecting the medium size one just to have a picture URL just for demonstration. You can select anything you want. So once this is done, our user's array is ready, the list is ready, not array, and I want to store that in the app state so that it will be accessible across all the requests. So wherever you have a request, you will be able to access the app.state also. So that's how you that's the reason I'm storing it in the app state. So it's available everywhere where you have request according to FastAPI documentation. So now that we have our startup event set up, this is just going to load the users from the API and store in the state. So now we have the users list, and I want to create another endpoint which will serve the users. So this endpoint is going to be get users, which for now will be pass. And now you can see that our Swagger UI is, I haven't showed you the Swagger UI. Yeah, it just has the home now. If I run this quickly, okay, we missed installing Pydantic email. Because we are using that, we should also install Pydantic email. Okay, so let's run that once it is installed. Okay, so now the local host is running, and if we look at the Swagger UI provided by FastAPI, just reloading, yeah, we have our home endpoint, which is giving us our cool motivational message to encourage us to keep on coding together, and our get users endpoint. So this is what I will be paginating now. We have 100 users, so obviously I'm not going to return all the users here. I'm going to include some query parameters, which is the page number and the page size. Okay, so if I have 100 users and I want the first page with the page size as 5, it means that I want the first 5 users, and if the page number is 2 and the size is 5, then I want the users from number 6 to number 10. So that's the second page. In the same way, you can manipulate the size based on the front-end requirements, but that's not out of the scope of this video. So let me minimize that and implement that real quick. So first I want to install a library called fastapi-pagination. So this library is really cool and provides you a simple implementation of the pagination, and we can use that to implement pagination in our website, in our API. And they have something called page params in their library. From fastapi pagination, import, we are going to import the page to specify the response model. I'm going to explain what page is in a minute, and we are going to import params, and this params will be used to tell the endpoint that we need the query parameters. So let me show you how that is done. So if you see the function, it's blank now, it's not taking any query parameters. I want to add the params, which is of type params. So this will be a depends, So this is what this is what is provided by fastapi. So you can look at the documentation for more details. So this params will be the query parameters that our endpoint needs to paginate. So if you look at if you run the server quickly and look at the endpoint and refresh, yes, you can see that there is a page and also a size. So you can play with the values. Default values are 1 and 5, so it's gonna serve the first page with 50 users in it, and if you change it to 2, then it will serve the last 50 users. Okay, so now I'm going to change it back to 5 according to our requirements, and we can just print out the params so that we can see params dot page, which we are getting, and also params dot size. Okay, so this will be printed out whenever I hit this endpoint. Let's see that in action. So I have selected page as 1 and size as 5. Let me minimize this, and if I execute, you can see that the page size is 1, page is 1 and the size is 5. Okay, so now only thing that we need to do is just add one more line, that is to paginate. So we already have the users list, we already have the page number from the params, and we also have the page size from the params, and we also have the page class to specify the response. Let me quickly do that first, and then we will move on to the pagination. So here in the decorator, you can specify the response model. Okay, so the response model would be page. So it is a page model that the fastapi pagination library provides us. So the Swagger will know exactly how the response will look like. So in our case, we are responding with a page of users, so we need to give page of user. Okay, the user is just the class that we defined already. So if we go and reload the Swagger now, you will see that it will also show us the response model. Actually, we have an error. Expected an indent before the function definition. Line number 51. Okay, I missed pass here, sorry about that. Okay, now it's fixed. Let me check the Swagger once again. If I reload quickly, yes, we see that it is returning a page which is basically a list of users. Okay, you have the user object here, so it has the ID, name, email, and picture, right? Okay, so for that we are using page here. So that's the purpose why I imported page and params. So similarly, we need to import one more thing, which is the actual paginate function. So they also have a beautiful function called paginate, which automatically paginates your users. So the only simple step that is left for us is to return the paginated users. So return paginate of, you need to provide the users which we have in the app state. If you remember, app.state.users, we have it stored in this list, and comma, you need to provide the parameters, which are nothing but the query parameters that we get here. These parameters contain the page number and the size. So now if you go and look at our Swagger, it will be all ready and ready to play for us with the pagination. Okay, so let's try it out. Let's refresh once again. Let's try it out. Let's give 1 and 5 and see. Okay, so as you can see, we have users from ID 0 to 4, and we also have a nice total. so that the front end knows how many pages are going to be there. So 100 divided by 5, in total we are going to have 20 pages, and the front end exactly knows that by this total number. And it also gives the front end the page number and the size. And if we change the page size to 10 and run that, we should be having the users from IDs 0 to 9, which works perfectly fine. And you can also see that the size and page are updating. And you can also play with the page numbers like we saw in the Google pagination. It returns us the page number 2 and 10, and similarly the IDs from 10 to 19. That's all for now, guys. I hope you liked the video and enjoyed it. Please consider liking the video and subscribe to make your YouTube feed technical and useful and informative. Bye bye, guys.